The WNBA is dealing with a full-blown credibility crisis, and the Indiana Fever have had it up to here. What Caitlin Clark endured against the Connecticut Sun wasn't just another bad whistle. It was part of a disturbing trend that's been quietly tolerated for way too long, and now it's boiling over. Here is the problem. So many of these incidents are happening towards Indiana Fever players, particularly Caitlin Clark, instead of headlines celebrating the Fever's huge win and their well-earned spot in the Commissioner's Cup Finals. All anyone can talk about is how Caitlin Clark continues to get manhandled. This wasn't physical basketball. This was a full-on ambush with stripes on the sidelines, shrugging like it's business as usual. The Sun didn't just play hard. They practically auditioned for an MMA contract and somehow walked away clean. The moment Fever head coach Stephanie White stepped in front of the mic, you could tell this wasn't going to be your average post-game cliché session. No measured takes, no coach speak. She was locked and loaded with facts, fury, and a full tank of righteous indignation ready to unleash. I've got every blazing highlight lined up, because this post-game wasn't just a rant, it was a reckoning. If there's one thing this game taught us, it's that the WNBA hasn't just failed to adjust after Caitlin Clark's injury hiatus. They've flat out tuned out every warning sign. And the Fever, they're officially out of patience, done playing nice, and ready to put the league on blast. Let's rewind the chaos, the aftermath, and the wave of reactions now crashing over the WNBA's officiating department like a tidal wave of do your job. The matchup: Indiana versus Connecticut in a high-stakes Commissioner's Cup rematch. Now, the Sun might not be title favorites, but they've perfected the art of messy basketball, and considering their record against the Fever, they clearly came into this one ready to stir the pot. From tip-off, the energy was tense, the fouls were flying, and the refs seemed to have left their whistles in the locker room, or just reserved them for Clark alone. Enter J.C. Sheldon, best known this season for treating opposing players like bowling pins. She's already injured Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson, but apparently she wanted to go 3 for 3 with a little extra spice for Caitlin Clark, her mortal enemy. Her mortal enemy. Took out a player. J.C. Sheldon. Caitlin Clark's mortal enemy. J.C. Sheldon. So she made a beeline for Caitlin's face. Yes, literally. And in the chaos that followed, Marina Mabrey body-checked Clark so hard you'd think they were scrimmaging for an NFL combine. In a single play, Connecticut resurrected all the dirtiest hits of last season in rapid-fire succession. Poking, pushing, and shoving like they were getting bonuses for each foul. You can't claw someone in the eye. Eject her. Eject both of them. Eject both of them. So there's nothing there. Nothing there. J.C. Sheldon claws her in the eye. Then the two of them get into it, and then Mabrey just goes and shoves her onto the ground. Eject both of them. And what did the refs do? Absolutely nothing. This was the moment for the league to step up and say, you don't mess with our star. Instead, they reached deep into their pocket and somehow pulled out a tech. For Caitlin Clark, you heard that right. No ejections, no technicals on the instigators. Just Caitlin Clark catching a tech for, what? Having a face. It would be hilarious if it weren't so maddening. And then the avalanche came. Fans, analysts, and former players weren't just irritated. They were straight up irate, unleashing a fury on social media that made ESPN trend like a scandal just dropped. I tell you, social media is setting the WNBA on fire right now, not in a good way. It's the understate. It was the kind of officiating debacle so ridiculous that Sentel didn't even have to crack jokes. He just posted the play as is, because reality had already crossed into satire. Commentators who usually keep it buttoned up were visibly heated. Marina Mabrey laying out Caitlin with no consequences. That wasn't a missed call. That was the officiating equivalent of waving a white flag. Even the usually diplomatic voices were fed up. When Caitlin Clark gets tackled and she's the one penalized, that's not basketball, that's parody. And the basketball world wasn't laughing. Alright, enough is enough. At some point the line gets crossed too often where something needs to be done and things need to be corrected. And that is certainly the case with the way things around Caitlin Clark are officiated. This is a constant problem now. It is something that, since the beginning, I've kind of backed off on, because physical play is a part of sports. Going after a superstar and trying to rough them off a little bit to get in their head is a part of sports. But when it crosses the line, the referees need to do their jobs. They need to do their jobs, blow the whistle, and officiate properly. Everyone was waiting on Stephanie White, and oh boy, did she deliver. But before we hit that thermonuclear post-game take, let's pause for the moment that reminded everyone why Clark's different. After getting thrashed, slammed, and stomped on, again, she didn't flinch. She grabbed the game by the throat, stepped behind the arc, and iced the sun with a dagger 3 right in J.C. Sheldon's face. Write a better script. She didn't just win the game. She made a statement. Loud, clear, and from way downtown. And the best part, she let them hear about it. The trash talk, the swagger, the I run this court energy. And then came the moment that flipped the narrative completely. After the dust had settled, the Fever's official account dropped a slow-motion clip of Caitlin Clark's reaction. And let's be clear, that wasn't just a celebration. That was a declaration. A silent cinematic mic drop seen across the basketball universe. Sophie Cunningham, with all the fury of a superhero whose origin story starts with someone messing with her teammate, exacted the perfect revenge. She didn't hesitate. She delivered a textbook flagrant on J.C. Sheldon. Clean, direct, and unmissable. It wasn't petty, it wasn't reckless. It was surgical, and it was necessary. Sophie didn't show up this season to pad stats. She was brought in to be the Fever's security detail, enforcer, and moral compass, all rolled into one headband-wearing powerhouse. When someone comes for Caitlin, they now understand there's a price to pay. This was all game, folks, all game. Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever were getting checked all game. The Indiana Fever were getting punked all game. The referees let this physical style of basketball continue and continue and continue and continue and continue and continue, and eventually, Sophie Cunningham had enough. The days of letting it slide are officially over. Indiana's tolerance has expired, and Sophie just filed the final notice. The crowd, absolutely electric. They knew what they were witnessing wasn't just retaliation. It was a message broadcast in high definition. The Fever will not be pushed around anymore. And then we hit a tipping point. When's the last time you heard national commentators openly slam the officials during a WNBA broadcast? Not question, not hint, slam. It was that out of control. The refs let the game spiral by refusing to make the obvious calls. When you fail to contain escalating physicality, this is the result. Player-on-player retaliation, chaos, borderline melees. And the only thing louder than the crowd was the silence from the whistles. So, of course, everyone was waiting for Stephanie White's post-game presser, like it was the season finale of a hit drama series. There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long, it's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical, and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates back. Because if you remember, Coach White already went nuclear earlier in the season over poor officiating, and caught a fine for it. But this was DEFCON 1. What happened during this game wasn't about one missed call. It was the latest chapter in a saga of blatant, repeated, and dangerous disregard for the league's most important player. And Stephanie didn't walk into that presser with a speech. She walked in with a flamethrower. Do you really think that the NBA would be allowing certain players in the NBA to go after LeBron the way that Caitlin was chucked to the ground? Do you think if another player came up blindside of LeBron, chucked him to the ground after he had just been poked in the eye, that the NBA would be like, oh yeah, technicals, nobody's ejected, just a common technical foul? That would never it would never happen. And it's crazy that, it's not actually crazy, it's not surprising, unfortunately, because the referees have been horrible this entire time, but somebody else who called out the referees and has not been afraid to call out the referees is Coach Stephanie White. Commentators echoed the same sentiment. The refs lost control. It was a failure in real time, and every player felt it. When the officials won't protect you, the players will protect each other. That's exactly what we saw, and you better believe the Fever's front office approved every second of Sophie's enforcement. They've had it. This kind of thing, it's textbook sports justice. The NBA's been doing it for decades. Remember the bad boy Pistons, the Jordan rules, the Bulls having to hire enforcers to protect Jordan? You don't touch the star without getting touched back. Think Draymond Green protecting Steph Curry. Same energy. It's about respect, about hierarchy, about sending a warning. Take liberties with our franchise player and you'll regret it. Stephanie White, for her part, did everything she could to protect Caitlin postgame, fielding the tough questions herself. But you could see it. Behind the composed answers and coach speak, the rage was simmering. And then she said it, plain, raw, and from the heart. Just call the foul. That's it. That's all she asked. The bare minimum, because this wasn't a sudden flare-up. It was a volcano that had been rumbling all game long. Bumps, grabs, shoves, contact after the whistle, it all added up. And the league? Crickets. This is J.C. Sheldon right here, with an entire handful of Caitlin Clark's shoulder and bicep, and she's twisting it. Okay? I mean, this is wild. Here's the zoomed out look, the snapshot. I mean, this league does not have control of its players. The most ridiculous part, players like J.C. Sheldon, who barely register on the league radar, are getting the green light to lunge at Caitlin like it's a demolition derby. The WNBA is playing a dangerous game. They're risking not just a player, but the engine of their entire resurgence. Caitlin Clark isn't just a star, she's the star. The reason for sold-out arenas, TV ratings, national coverage. Take her out, and the whole house of cards could come crashing down, and even worse. By doing nothing, the league is setting the tone. They're saying it's open season on Caitlin. You can rough her up, cheap shot her, poke her in the eye, and odds are she'll be the one whistled. That's not just incompetence, that's negligence. Then came the line that's going to be replayed in every sports segment from coast to coast. The game has changed so much. Players are faster, they're better, they're bigger, they're stronger. Oh, you know, they're as good as they've ever been, they're as athletic as they've ever been. The game is fast. Now, things are happening quickly. Everybody's getting better, except the officials. Stephanie White didn't just point the finger at the refs from this game. She called out the entire WNBA. This isn't isolated, it's systemic. They've complained before. They've filed concerns. And the league? Nada. No action, no review. Just silence and a steady stream of technicals for the players being targeted. Then she dropped the hammer. These officials aren't keeping up with the league. Translation. The referees are out of their depth. The game has evolved, and the officiating hasn't. It's a serious accusation, and it should send shockwaves through the league offices. But let's not kid ourselves. This isn't the first red flag. It's just the loudest. We've seen Caitlin nearly in tears mid-game, pleading for a fair whistle. We've watched her get blindsided while the refs look the other way. This isn't behind closed doors anymore. It's live and in color. And now the WNBA is standing at a crossroads, staring down three massive problems. Finally fed up, once again, WNBA, we're not talking about your basketball. We're talking about the WNBA, WWE Royal Circus that you got going on right now. First, the headlines aren't about basketball anymore. Nobody's talking about the Fever's playoff push, or how Clark dropped another jaw-dropping performance. All the focus is on the chaos, brawls, missed calls, and fan outrage. This was supposed to be a celebration of rising talent, but instead, it's become a circus. Second, if Caitlin Clark goes down again, the WNBA's moment could vanish overnight. Ratings? Gone. Ticket sales? Plummet. Media coverage? Poof. We already got a preview when she missed 5 games earlier this season, and it wasn't pretty. The league without Caitlin feels like the Super Bowl with no halftime show. Flat? Forgettable. All the owners have to do is say, what if she gets injured again? Because we are not committing to this because she can get injured again. If she gets injured again, it's over. And lastly, and this one's the most dangerous, the league has alienated its biggest asset. Caitlin Clark fans aren't just cheering her on, they're now openly rooting against the WNBA's leadership. That's not a branding issue. That's a full-blown civil war. You've got a league that should be embracing its biggest star, instead creating animosity between her supporters and the officials meant to protect her. So now, the fire's lit, and the spotlight's blinding. The WNBA can't hide behind vague statements or backroom apologies anymore. The whole world is watching. And what they do next will define their future. Because one thing's certain, this league cannot afford another second of silence.